Good evening, I'm Joe Jenkins with Central Hudson. Thank you for joining us for our Facebook Live discussion on the story behind your Central Hudson bill. We know our customers are facing rising prices and increasingly challenging times, and that residents are paying closer attention to all of their bills and expenses. This includes gas and electric bills. During tonight's broadcast, we'll discuss the key components of your Central Hudson bill, what factors have an impact on energy costs, and steps you can take to mitigate those impacts. Joining me at the desk is Chris Valdez, who will be fielding questions from our customers who have logged in this evening. Chris?
Thank you, Joe. So we have received some questions in advance of tonight's program that we will address. We will also take questions in this chat room. Please be aware of any spam links that are in this chat. Do not click any links that do not come from us. This event is not meant to address individual account issues. We will address comments and questions relevant to the topic of this evening's event.
Thank you, Chris. Also joining us to help explain the different components of your bill is Anthony Campigiorni, Senior Vice President of Customer Services and Gas Operations, Stacy Powers, Director of Cost, Rates, and Forecasts, and Joe Halley, Manager of Regulatory Affairs. Thank you all for joining us. Now, there are two major components of your Central Hudson bill, the delivery portion and the supply portion. This short video is going to explain the difference between the two.
Whether you're an electric customer, a natural gas customer, or both, you'll notice on your bill that your energy charges are divided into delivery charges and supply charges. So, what's the difference? Delivery charges represent Central Hudson's cost for transporting electricity and natural gas to your home or business. This includes the use of Central Hudson's electric and gas lines, operating and maintaining that network, and providing an array of customer services. Supply charges pay for the actual units of energy, whether it's electricity or natural gas. While you're able to choose the company that supplies your energy, note that Central Hudson purchases energy supply on the wholesale market and does not mark up those supply charges.
Now that we have the basics, let's start with the delivery portion of the bill. Joe, I'd like to bring you in on this just to get started. Supply rates and delivery rates that the customers see on their bill are calculated very differently. Would you be able to kind of give us an overview of what delivery rates are?
Sure, Joe. Thanks. Delivery charges are really the charges that allow Central Hudson to recover our cost, really for performing our core business, which is delivering electric and natural gas to our customers' homes and businesses. So those costs are generally our investments in that infrastructure, so pipes and wires, new initiatives, and state-sponsored programs such as energy efficiency and heat pump programs. Those all get baked into the delivery rates. Since we are a regulated utility, those rates are approved by the Public Service Commission in a forum called the rate case. That rate case generally allows for many different parties, consumer advocates, state agencies, the utility itself, environmentalists, to discuss Central Hudson's programs and initiatives, as well as the bill impact of those costs. At the end of that process, which generally takes a year, the Public Service Commission approves a change in Central Hudson's rates. The last change came last November 2021, and really approved rates for the next 3 years at a rate of 2% or less for the typical residential customer each year. So those rates, again, they're set for about 3 years, which makes them pretty stable for our customers. Now, I'm sure our customers are saying, well, but I do see the delivery portion of my bill change from month to month or year to year. Again, the rate changes by a small amount, 2% a year, but the other factor is that it's a rate multiplied by the usage of the customer that turns into the delivery portion of the customer's bill. So rate times usage equals delivery charge, and a customer's usage changes for all sorts of reasons, month to month, year to year. They got new equipment, seasonal changes. If you have equipment outside or an air conditioner, the heat will really impact that, and your electric bill will go up because your usage will go up during that period. And so that's really the delivery bill and what causes it to change, even though the rate is very stable from year to year.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. I'd like to transition now to that other portion of the bill, the supply portion, and I think that's where we've been talking a lot about the increased volatility that customers are seeing significant swings on their bill. Stacy, Anthony, I'd like to bring you in this part here. Stacy, to start off, would you be able to kind of give us an overview of supply prices and how they behave differently from the delivery rates that Joe just discussed?
Sure. So, the one aspect I'll start with, Joe discussed the fixed nature of delivery rates, and they're set in advance. Neither of those apply to the supply rates. The reason being is that Central Hudson goes out to the market and purchases supply on behalf of our customers. So to the extent that the market prices are changing, customers are seeing those on their bill. Central Hudson does not mark up the supply. We don't make a profit on it. We're just passing through the costs that we're incurring to provide customers with that supply. So supply rates change on a monthly basis. Customers may be familiar with where on our website they can find those supply rates. But what I also want to point out is what a customer sees on their bill is a supply rate that's blended and really representative of their billing period. So what I mean by that is, for example, let's say a supply rate changed on October 1st, and a customer is billed from September 15th to October 15th. The supply rate they see on their bill is going to be a blend of the rates that were in effect over their billing period, which can look a little different from what they see on our website. But I think the most important aspect there is that because we're purchasing on the market and those market prices do fluctuate, that's why customers are seeing that component of their bill fluctuating. What I do want to point out is what I just described is the supply prices from Central Hudson. Customers also have the option to purchase their supply from a third party. And it's possible some of those third parties could offer fixed supply options as well.
Okay. Great, thank you. We talked about that volatility, Anthony. I think this is where we bring you in. What are some of the factors that are really causing that volatility? And I think we have some graphics up that really kind of show the ups and downs of natural gas supply prices and electric prices. But what are some of the things that are causing this?
Yeah, these are commodities, so they're subject to global forces. When there's supply and demand imbalances, it creates sometimes some volatility. And so we're certainly seeing that. People are seeing that at the fuel pump with their cars. We're seeing it at natural gas prices and electricity, which a lot of it downstate New York is generated with natural gas and is causing that price to rise. So there's geopolitical factors. The war in Ukraine certainly has caused an event in Western Europe where we're liquefying a lot of natural gas. We're now exporting it. So there's greater global demand for that and out of this country. And so, when you look at the factors, we have pipeline constraints here in New York as well. So when you look upstream, we haven't built new pipeline capacity. That inhibits some of the flow of that commodity to come in, which affects supply prices. And then just usage. So if you have a colder than normal winter or a warmer than normal summer, those things will be fluctuations above normal, will cause excess pressure on the supply pressure. And then, if the economy is rebounding well and you have greater demand, those things will all influence the prices. And I think the important thing is what Stacy said before, though, is that, you pay what Central Hudson pays. You have choices out there to pick your providers. Prior to the year 2000, Central Hudson used to be vertically integrated. What does that mean? We used to generate the power and then we used to deliver it through our pipes and wires, right? Many people still think we do that because when you get the bill, you get that all from us. But we don't do that. We're indifferent where you buy that supply portion of your energy from. And so people have choices. We are indifferent. We make no money on that portion of the bill. It's a pure pass-through for us. And so people have the ability to choose. The state decided to deregulate that market and let markets forces enter. And this is sometimes what you get with markets. You get some volatility here, and that's what we're seeing.
Great.
And do you mind if I jump in? Because we have a couple questions that are on topic to what we're talking about now. Anthony, you sort of answered that right there, but Erin asked if Central Hudson is not the one who sets the cost of electricity, then who does? And then we had Chuck asked, how do our supply rates compare to third parties? Can either of you answer those two questions?
Joe, you want to take the who sets our rates maybe first on a portion of how our rates are set?
Yeah, so I'll who sets our rates? Again, there are two portions of the bill, right? There are delivery rates and there are supply rates. The delivery rates are set within that rate case process for 3 years generally and are relatively stable, especially at this point where they're only increasing about 2% or less per year. When we're looking at supply, again, it depends on whether you're talking about natural gas or electricity. Electricity is generally, there is the New York Independent System Operator, which really is in charge of controlling reliability at a higher level than an individual utility. And they ensure that there's enough electricity for each of the utilities to purchase in New York State. And that's generally who Central Hudson is purchasing electricity from. And that's really where the rate for electricity that we pass on to our customers is set. The other aspect is for natural gas. We generally purchase that on the open market from many different suppliers, and that's where the price is set. We are generally looking for the lowest price for our consumers, but there are limits to that, and we can only pass on what we purchase the gas at.
Okay. So the
Thank
other
you.
part of your question was, where can they purchase their supply from? So there's energy services companies, ESCOs, on our website under Energy Choice. You'll see the ability for you to go and go shop for that. Is the price higher or lower? It depends, right? No one can predict the prices. We have certain strategies we buy on the markets. Some people might take advantage of shopping around and choosing an energy service company for the provider of electric or natural gas on the supply side. They have the option to do that. And that's exactly what the state wanted to happen when they deregulated the markets. They wanted customers to go out there and choose their supply. I know a lot of customers don't, but they have the option to do that if they'd rather do that themselves.
And just to add to that, the area of the website that Anthony mentioned, we have lists of those ESCOs. In addition, we have a link to a section of the Public Service Commission's webpage where you can actually see what each of those ESCOs is currently offering if you were looking to lock into a contract with them. So that could be helpful information for customers too.
Great, thank you. I think that was helpful.
And just one quick point of clarification when it comes to all this volatility. We've talked about it sort of on an international and a national and a regional level, but these sort of price swings in supply price, these aren't really isolated to Central Hudson, right? This is something that's being kind of experienced across the state and across the country, right?
Yeah, for sure, Joe. I mean, there are some regional differences, but for sure, this is affecting all utilities across the country and really right now across the globe right now. And so these volatile prices that we had seen on that graph are not unique to Central Hudson. These price spikes are not unique. And again, we're finding it in our everyday lives, right? At the gas pump, you'll see it in costs. Generally, inflation has caused just a rise in prices, but the volatile nature of it right now is happening across the globe for sure.
Great. Now, Stacy, we talk about a lot of this volatility, and I think what our customers would really like to know is how does this impact their bill? We have some graphics, and I'm hoping that we could kind of walk through what some of these price swings on an apples to apples comparison would have on an impact to a customer's bill.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we have a graphic of, is it the bill itself we want to go through?
Yeah. It's well, we're starting off with the graphic that shows the change in supply charge. So we see the sort of volatility dating back, and we see spikes with the polar vortex back in 2014, where I think we saw some prices that were pretty similar to what we're seeing today, but just a very up and down, sort of inconsistent trend line. So
Yep.
that's for natural gas, if you want to talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, and so to your point here, Joe, I mean, this is the supply rate, but doesn't necessarily translate yet to what a customer sees on their bill. So looking at this gas chart here, on the right-hand side of the chart, you see the recent prices that we've been experiencing. And you do have to go back, like you said, to kind of that polar vortex of 2014. But we have experienced prices this high in the past. I know we have some bills to show, so what I will point out is, the past couple years, 2019, 2020, part of 2021, we were experiencing pretty low and not as volatile prices. So that's, I think, is what customers tend to remember in the recent history.
Yeah, Joe, and I would also just point out on this, I mean, you look around the time that COVID, let's say, broke out in 2020, I mean, when you look at, per 100 cubic feet of natural gas, you're down in the 20-cent range. Now you're looking at the end of this graph here, almost $1 per 100 cubic feet. I mean, it's a 5-time increase, right? That's pretty dramatic. And as we said before, natural gas drives the prices for electric generation downstate. And so this is the key component that goes into making energy downstate. It's natural gas. And so that correlation has to be well understood. So even if you're not a natural gas customer, your electric bill is really being generated in the markets by natural gas right now.
Yeah, and I think that's exaggerated too with the closure of Indian Point. That's made us even more so reliant on natural gas and sort of that market price and how it drives on electricity, right?
Yeah, we've taken away some fuel diversity, right? So you've had options in the past before. We've seen more than a doubling of prices in the zone that we get energy from after the closure of Indian Point. And so that certainly has had an impact on pricing here.
Okay, let's move forward. This is again, our look at the sort of the variation that we've seen on electric prices. And, Stacy, I think, if you could talk a little bit about how, we've seen some up and downs, especially, 2016, but it seemed relatively consistent, or at least within a certain bandwidth. But we've seen some increased volatility since 2021, really. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so for a lot of the reasons we've kind of already listed, right? Like Anthony just said, the generation of electricity is really dependent on natural gas right now. And we just saw that natural gas chart. But we really have, again, here, enjoyed pretty low and stable prices in recent history. But within this past year, have really seen those supply price spikes, which is what customers are seeing on their bill.
Great. And this is a little bit more of a condensed timeline, but I think it really, if you could, Stacy, speak a little bit to the difference, what we're showing visually here, that difference between supply volatility and delivery.
Sure. So again, this is just the rate. It's the per unit rate, so not yet quantified into dollars that a customer would see on their bill. But Joe spoke to, the stability of delivery prices. They're set for a longer period of time. And I think you can really see that here. You do see the slight increase in delivery in July of 2022, which is when we entered the second stage of the planned delivery rate increases. But compared to delivery, obviously, you can see supply really does fluctuate. And that is where customers are seeing the volatility on their bill.
Great. And now we're looking at a bill, and Stacey, if you could walk us through this. This is a residential bill for 600 kilowatt hours of usage on both months, right? And there's a pretty drastic change.
Yeah, yep. So we use the 600 just for comparison between the two time periods. So here we're comparing the most recent month of September 2022 with 2 years prior. So if you look at the dark green bar on the graph, you can see that delivery is relatively in line between those two time periods. As we've spoke of, there are planned delivery rate increases that go into effect each year as approved by the Public Service Commission. So you do see an increase in delivery a bit, but really focusing on that light green bar is the increase in supply. This particular, so what we're looking at here for this electric bill, it's over a 50% increase in total bill when you compare these two time periods. And customers do see this information on their bill. They may be familiar with the pie chart that we have that really does display the same information, how much of their bill is comprised of delivery charges and how much is supply. And I'll point out one of the comments that Jill made before. It also depends on how much you use. So for this bill, it's given 600 kilowatt hours, but obviously, customers use all different ranges of usage, so that can affect what they're seeing on their bill as well.
And Joe, what I would say here when I look at this bill, since February, we've been inundated with calls at our contact center, and customers are calling and saying my bill is really high and it can't be. And on many bills, when we look at the analysis, we're like, this is the same exact usage as you had last year, but your costs are up, Stacey just mentioned on the supply side, 50%. So when you look in particular, you could take a bill in the February time period, and it might have been $300 in 2021. That bill could have went to $700 on that supply spike in 2022. And that's dramatic, but your usage didn't change. And this really shows the delivery is stable. It's really the supply. We're trying to have people make sure you look at your bill, look at your usage, right? Look at your usage first. Is it consistent with prior years so you're not using more? Then look at that supply piece. How much did your supply piece go up? And is that really the factor driving it? And we're finding for a majority of those calls, that's really the driver, that people just can't believe how much it went up. And again, we have no control. It's a pure pass-through for the company. We make no money on that. We're just passing it through to the customers as we buy it.
And we're going to take a look at a natural gas bill as well for our natural gas customers. And I think we see, similar trends and similar performances from what we saw on the electric side. Could you walk us through that, Stacy?
Sure. So just like you said, Joe, it's a similar story here. We're comparing the same months, but the increase in supply is much more drastic here on the gas side. When we were looking at the graph of the supply rates themselves, Anthony pointed out like that low point, that 20 cents back in 2020. And you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. And then in our most recent month in September, we're seeing those supply prices that are near $1 per CCF. This bill, the comparison between these 2 months here is over a 70% increase in total bill.
Significant. And given what we've spoken about up to this point, Anthony, I want to direct this one at you if you don't mind. We've talked about how delivery prices work. We've talked about how these supply prices work. And there's a common concern out there that Central Hudson and any other utility in New York State, frankly, might be engaging in a practice of price gouging. Is that something that you could kind of talk to us about? Because it seems hard to do based on what we're talking about.
Yeah, and for me, honestly, it's pretty distasteful. We're hearing that from elected officials right now during a political season, an election season, but I think it's pretty irresponsible of elected officials to say that we're price gouging based on market supply costs, which is the way the system works in New York, that it's a pure pass-through. So there is no price gouging going on here, and I think it's pretty irresponsible of elected officials to accuse us of that. And I wish they would be more responsible than that in making those kind of statements. And I think people understand during political campaigns, people say almost anything. Irrespective of that, I think they still really should pull back on that kind of nonsense and that kind of talk. Again, we're really regulated, very regulated company. These are market charges that we pass through and have no markup on. And so I think it's just very irresponsible of elected officials to be doing that right now. And we're seeing a lot of it, quite frankly, Joe.
I just want to touch on that a little bit. And, as a New York State regulated utility, we are regulated. Every element of our business is regulated by the New York State Public Service Commission, a New York State agency. And so when you look at the commodity prices, you look at the supply portion of the bill, all of those charges, all of those components are reviewed by the Public Service Commission or their staff. There's nothing within our business that's not reviewed in some way, shape, or form by our regulatory agency, the Public Service Commission. So, to insinuate that we're price gouging, it's happening right under the noses of our regulator, and it's just continuing unchecked, I think is, very much an irresponsible comment.
All right. Thank you both. Stacy, I want to bring you back in for a moment. We've been talking a lot about this volatility and how it impacts customers' bills. What are we seeing in the immediate future? What are we seeing for the winter and the months moving forward?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not seeing any relief yet. On the gas side, it's looking like the prices that we're seeing currently are going to be with us through about the springtime. And on the electric side, we are still continuing to see prices increase through the winter. So I think it's definitely an important message for customers that, these high prices are still with us for a while.
And I think, Joe, what customers really need to recognize is, since they're going to be here for a while, is, adjust some of your patterns. If you can engage in some energy efficiency measures, replacing your light bulbs, engaging in programmable thermostats, you should really look at those options. And look, we may have to look at something we haven't talked about in a while here, energy conservation, right? Maybe just turning things down a little bit, an extra layer. It's not the way we're normally used to living, but maybe some of those things have to take place right now if the prices are going to remain high and you want to save a couple of dollars. I think it's important that we take both energy efficiency and energy conservation into account here as we kind of plan our budgets going forward here. There are tools and programs through Central Hudson, not only for energy efficiency to help you manage your bill, but also for payment options. And again, all that information is on our website where customers can avail themselves to both energy efficiency programs and payment programs if they're having problems paying their bill.
That's great. And I know you had mentioned it, but we do have a lot of low cost and no cost tips for our customers. You dial that thermostat down just 1 degree, it saves you about 3% on your bill. Right. So I guess right now, Chris, we'll go over to you. I think we want to address some of the customer questions. So do you have anything going on over there?
Yes, we have a few. One of them, this up top of my list, we have others too as well, but we have a couple questions about green energy, renewable energy. What is our commitment? What is our stance? Do either of you want to talk about our stance or our viewpoints on renewables?
Do you want to start, John?
Sure. And again, I think what's very important is generation in New York State is deregulated. The utility does not own any significant amounts of generation in New York State. So really, Central Hudson has been supporting many of the goals of New York State, most of them written into law through the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which really is pushing forward renewable generation. That renewable generation is then added to the overall mix of generation in New York State, which Central Hudson, we don't pick the generator that we generally purchase from. We, again, purchase from the New York Independent System Operator. So to the extent that they're baked into that overall mix, we will be purchasing that energy and providing it to our customers. We also provide funding for the gap that renewable energy generators need to fund their projects. That funding comes from our customers. It goes to support NYSERDA programs. And so that's baked into our rates. It's a state-sponsored program. NYSERDA is the controller of that program. We fund that program, and then they provide those renewable generators with some additional funds that make the finances of their project work out for
Yeah,
them.
and Chris, can I just maybe add on a couple things? So on a per capita basis, Central Hudson has always been a leader in interconnections for solar throughout the Northeast, and we continue to do that. The state has goals, as Joe mentioned, for renewable energy, 6,000 megawatts of solar, 3,000 megawatts of battery storage, and 9,000 megawatts of wind generation. We support those goals. We're working towards those. But I do think it is important for customers to understand that all that renewable generation doesn't necessarily displace everything we need. And so what happens? So you have some of those energy resources from the renewable side. If the wind isn't blowing, if the sun isn't shining, you need what we call baseload dispatchable generation that can be quick started. Right now, the perfect complement with today's technology is natural gas. That's just a fact. And so right now, we're not getting rid of that infrastructure that we need for reliability. So as we getting more renewables onto the system, we still need our existing systems in today's technology world and what we have to be the perfect complement to those renewables for when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. And that's a really important thing, because I think people have this impression as we just produce more renewables, we're just going to get rid of the system we have today. And really, you need that backbone for the reliability of the system today. So it's a complement to it, not a displacement of it. Okay.
Thank you. And we got, as mentioned earlier, we got some questions leading into this event. One of them was we talked about the fluctuation in supply prices. What does Central Hudson do? What are our strategies to mitigate those swings or prepare for potential swings? Like you said, the winter might bring higher prices. What does Central Hudson do to help dampen those fluctuations?
Yeah. So we hedge our portfolio. We go out and we do procure some power at some fixed prices ahead of time. On the electric side, we try to hedge up to 60% of our portfolio. It is tailored to some of the colder and warmer months where you see more volatility because of increased demand, like for summer cooling or winter heating. On the gas side, we also hedge. So you employ a hedge strategy to try to dampen some of that volatility, right? So you kind of try to take some of the sharp tweaks out. Now, if it's an abnormally warm summer or an abnormally cold winter, or demand is just a lot higher than you forecasted, if anything's on above normal or way below normal, sometimes those hedging strategies aren't perfect, right? And so but we do deploy them to try to dampen some of that volatility and take some of that volatility away.
I think there's three general things that we do. And the first Anthony touched on is hedging, which just hopefully reduces the volatility by having some fixed contracts in the mix. We don't hedge 100% of our commodity or supply purchases, but we do hedge a good portion of them. The other two things are we try to communicate a good deal with our customers, letting them know if we have a sense that these higher bill periods are coming on the supply side. We try to communicate to our customers, let them know that it may be time to look at how much energy you're using and to see if you can dampen those impacts on your own, on your side. And the third thing we do is we do from month to month try to smooth out some of those increases by delaying the recovery or the pass-through of some of those supply costs to a future month or a future 2 months and dampen the bill increase as much as possible. That is a little bit limited, and we can't use that tool for too long of a period of time, but we try to do it month to month to reduce the volatility that a customer would see.
And then two other questions we got, continuing with supply. They asked, are others in New York seeing similar changes or increases in supply prices? And then thinking nationally, how does New York supply prices on average compare to other states? So how does Central Hudson compare within the state, and then how does the state as a whole compare to other states?
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak for New York State. I mean, we're in constant contact with our peers at other utilities, and you know, I can tell you they're all seeing the same thing. In addition, as Joe said before, you know, our supply prices are also reviewed by the Public Service Commission. We're in constant contact with them. They understand what we're seeing, and they're seeing the same thing across the state as well. In fact, the governor recently issued a press release to kind of warn consumers that we're seeing this across the state. High prices are still with us for a while. And then speaking a little more generally, as far as other industry groups that we're a part of, which deal with utilities throughout the country, the same messaging. High prices, they're going to get, you know, higher potentially this winter. Definitely seeing that consistent message.
Yeah, I think the key there is one of the primary drivers is a global issue, and therefore it's going to be seen, you know, nationwide within the U.S., but also globally. This demand for natural gas, the disruption that's been caused in the markets by both COVID and the war in Ukraine, both have a significant impact on supply prices that our customers, other utilities customers across the country, and other utilities customers across the world are seeing right now.
Okay.
And I will say, you know, regionally, it's no secret that the Northeast has some constraints, right, in its pipeline capacity and the ability to get gas. I mean, if you see what happens in Boston, they barge LNG, liquefied natural gas, to Boston Harbor in order to, you know, keep the reliability going because they don't have pipelines, so they're actually barging LNG into Boston Harbor. That speaks to a little bit of our Northeast regional differences in terms of pipeline capacity. We have really canceled several projects over the last 5 to 10 years here to not allow additional pipelines to come in. So that, I think, exacerbates what I think both Stacy and Joe had said about, you know, New York regionally. We have additional pressures, I think, here.
And if I could ask another one. Well, we're still getting questions about the delivery portion of the bill. Can you, Joe, I know you touched upon this, but can maybe you go into the process a little bit more of how delivery charges are set? What's the proceeding like? Who else weighs in? Do we hear from anybody else? Is it just us in the state in a room? Can you talk a little bit about what that's like?
Sure, Chris. So again, delivery rates are set within a rate case process. So generally, Central Hudson proposes a change in its rates, again, based on increases in costs that we see coming, whether it's because we have to make more investments in aging infrastructure and replacing that aging infrastructure, if there are new initiatives, there are new state-sponsored programs like energy efficiency heat pumps, those things all drive increasing cost, just like in any other business. We have to then reset our rates to recalibrate them to recover those costs. When we propose those new rates to reset those costs, many other parties, including state agencies, the Public Service Commission staff, environmentalists, consumer advocates that represent both residential customers and large commercial customers, are all involved in that process. They all get their voice heard about the validity of the investments and initiatives and state-sponsored programs that we're putting forward and the costs of those programs, initiatives, and investments. And then at the end of that process, which generally takes a year, either a proposal is put forward before the commission or a recommended decision from a judge is put forward in front of the commission, and the commission will approve a new rate plan for the company, which could be either 1 year or 3 years or so in length. And then that new rate plan would have the rates established that Central Hudson is going to charge for the delivery portion of the bill going forward.
It's almost a year-long process. It's a rigorous process. As Joe mentioned, there's multiple parties involved. It's not by any means an open checkbook. We get scrutinized on every dollar we spend. Why are we spending it? If you think about our mandate of our regulator, the Public Service Commission, it's kind of like safe and reliable service at just and reasonable rates. So they have to ensure that. So they want reliability. So we get money for tree trimming and making sure that we can recover. But they have to ensure that customers can afford the bills. And so we get scrutinized. It's a rigorous process that we go through. And we've been going through it every 3 years on 3-year settlements. There's many parties involved. And so there's a lot of rigor around it. I don't want anyone to think that this is like an easy process. You know, the state and Central Hudson in a room by themselves kind of negotiating a deal. It's not. It's not like that at all. There's a lot of people involved, and it's very rigorous.
And to that point, there's often public hearings that are held where, you know, even average folks have the opportunity to weigh in on these and voice their opinions as well. One thing I did want to touch on quick, I see we've gotten a couple questions. There's some questions about delivery versus supply and how it appears on the bill, right? So, and folks are asking why sometimes their delivery portion looks larger than the supply. Now, that's really a function of where those supply rates are at in terms of that market volatility, right? Could we speak about that?
So I think just quick graphically, it really depends on where the supply prices are. So we showed the earlier graphic that had the September of 2020 versus September of 2022. I think in both of those graphics, what you saw was the supply portion in 2020 was lower than the delivery portion. And then what we saw when we compared it to 2022, whether it was electric or natural gas, is there was more than 100% increase in the supply portion, which is, you know, the commodity for electric or natural gas, more than 100% increase in that portion of the bill, driven by all of these factors that we've been discussing. And that's when the supply portion has either overtaken or comes close to equaling the delivery side of the bill. So it really depends on where we are with supply prices at any given point. As we said, they're volatile. So at sometimes they'll be less than delivery, other times they'll be higher than delivery, and other times, coincidentally, they'll be very close to equal with delivery. But it's because of that volatility and how they change from time to time. Again, one of the points we made earlier was supply prices are not that stable, they're volatile, where when we're looking at the rate for delivery, that is a stable rate. However, it's also multiplied by the usage of the customer, so it depends on the usage. But overall, it's much more stable because the rate itself is stable. On supply, the rate is volatile and the usage is volatile. So you have two volatile components, where on the delivery side, you only have the one piece that's variable, which is usage.
In general, you want the market forces to work to lower that price on supply, and delivery is going to be more than supply in those cases, and that would be a net benefit to customers right now, just to be, you know, candid, right? So you don't want that supply rate to be more than the delivery. You want the delivery rate to be higher.
Does weather have a lot to do with that? I assume in the hot summer when you have the AC on, in the cold winters, if you have electric or gas heat, your supply is going to go, is traditionally going to be higher during those months, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Joe touched on it a little bit earlier with usage. And the charts that we had up, I'm not sure if folks are seeing them right now, but we're comparing 2 different months with the same usage level. But exactly to your point, Chris, if it's really cold, then possibly customers are using more gas or electric to heat their home. Your usage is going to go up, so naturally you're going to see an increase in your bill as well.
And just one more aspect of weather. You know, in those years where we hear about polar vortexes and things of that nature, where there's extreme cold for a majority of the country, what that generally does is it increases the demand so much that it affects the underlying price of the commodity or supply. And so that's also something that would change the rate. So it changes both the usage, customers using more, but because of the demand that's felt throughout the country and not just in a very regional, localized spot, it also increases the price of the underlying commodity.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Chris?
I think we're caught up with most of them. There was one, it's not so much about delivery versus supply, but we had a few people asking this. This is a common question. Can one of you explain how the estimated billing process works and how we read meters every other month. In short, can someone just give a high-level overview of that?
I'll give a very high level, but then I'll defer to Anthony, who's really the expert on this. But what I'll say is, Central Hudson is a little bit odd when it comes to the other New York State utilities. We really read meters every other month. We don't read meters every month, but we do provide a bill every month. So we read every other month, provide a bill every month. And that's the outcome of a past rate agreement where other parties really said, it would be very helpful to your customers if they got a bill every month. That's where we are today. We're providing a bill every month. And so since we're only reading every other month, one of those months has to be an estimated bill. I think as we look forward to the future, we want to move away from that dynamic. We want to start reading meters or having meter reads every month so that it aligns with the billing periods much more closely and takes a little bit of uncertainty away from our customers. That's something we really understand here at Central Hudson. We understand that our customers don't like estimates. We want to move away from estimates as much as possible, and that's one place where we will be looking in the future to do that.
Yeah. No, I think Joe did a good job explaining that. The one thing I'll mention is I was told, during World War II, we had a lack of readers, and we started reading every other month rather than every month. That's what I was told. And Joe's right, and I think it was in our 2014 rate case where we were asked to go ahead and develop an estimating routine where customers are used to getting monthly bills in every other aspect of their lives, that they would like customers to get a monthly bill from us. And so that's what we did. So the only true thing is from your actual read to your actual read what your usage is. Because if your estimate is high one month, you go, oh my God, I can't believe my estimate's high. That means your next actual it should be lower, right? And so that's going to true up. So over a 2-month period, you really know your real usage. Everything in between is an estimate and then a true up, an estimate and a true up. And so really, if you look at a 2-month period from an actual to actual, that's your truest sense of your usage over a 2-month period. Again, it should all equal out if the estimate was high, it should be lower the next month and vice versa. So, but Joe's is effectively right that we're going to try to move away from monthly estimating routines, and we're going to have some proposals, I think, for the state to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. That was helpful. And another one just came across as well. We talked about, with the winter coming, we talked about energy efficiency. Can we also talk about the programs that Central Hudson has or that New York has to help those who are struggling and may fall behind on their bills, like payment assistance programs?
Yeah, so we have a number of payment assistance programs, that we can help customers with. So some that are income eligible will be eligible for some assistance through some HEAP programs that we have. We also have kind of deferred payment arrangements that we can work with customers in helping to meet their bills. We also have a Good Neighbor Fund that can also help customers with bills. I think it's going to be very individualized on your circumstances and where you fall, but I would encourage customers that are struggling to certainly give us a call, talk to a representative, reach out to us so you can get some information on the programs, and we'll align you to the programs that best fit for your needs.
And besides calling, how else can customers reach us?
Yeah, I think right now calling is my least favorite option right now. We need to get some more staff to answer more phones. I think live chat is up and running. We have multiple agents working on that. It's open from 8 to 4:30, so live chat is a good way. And then email, right? We can work on the email after hours as well, get back to customers. Those are some other channels that they can reach out to us and get to us.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Chris?
That is all.
All right. Anthony, Stacy, Joe, I want to open the floor to you guys for just a minute if there's anything you'd like to add before we close up.
Yeah, for me, I think we've mentioned it, Joe, but it's hammering home again, the point here that, Central Hudson's rates are fixed, are set by our regulator through the Public Service Commission, are stable. If your usage is stable, your rate for that rate period is going to be the same based on, the amount of usage may change, but your rate will be the same. Supply costs are going up. Stacy mentioned we see them kind of not getting better until the spring. It's going to be a tough winter. We don't control that. We're a pure pass-through on the marketplace, and I need people to understand that. So although you get the bill from us, we don't keep that money. We pass that money back to the generators and the people who charged us those dollars. And so I think what you have to do for this winter is prepare yourself, is to try to really get efficient, look for conservation measures to save a little bit. You talked about turning down the thermostat. 1 degree saves you maybe 3% on your bill. Customers are going to have to look through that. It is going to be, I think, a tough winter on supply, but we don't control that. We are a pure pass-through, and I need customers to really understand that, because we get a lot of calls on that, and I understand because our name on the top of the bill, but we're a pure pass-through for that.
And I would just add to that, take a look at your bill. We have charts on the bill that show you that breakdown of delivery versus supply. It puts some numbers to it. Really understand where you're seeing the changes. As Anthony said before, has your usage changed? And is that what's driving a change on your bill? So definitely take a look.
And the closing statement I'd make is, you are our customer. You're extremely important to us. And if you do, have questions, contact us through the channels we just talked about, whether it's live chat or, electronically, or, if you do call us. I think those are all important things. If you do have issues, we are here to help you through those issues, whether it's, difficulty in paying your bill, or if you have questions of any kind. We are here to support our customers.
Great. Well, thank you all for your time and insight. This concludes our broadcast for the evening. Central Hudson will host additional Facebook Live events in the future. Keep following us there for more information. Thank you for your time and your participation. Your questions and concerns are incredibly important to us, and we hope you found this informative. I'm Joe Jenkins. Have a good night.